We're talking today with Gord Youngquist of Douglas, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Gord, can you start us off with some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born 4/12/56 out of a small little suburb of Chicago called Wheaton, Illinois.
All right. Now, did you grow up there?
I was there till 4 years, and then my folks moved on up here into West Michigan area, actually Ganges, which is not far from here in Douglas. Grew up there, went to school in Fenville, you know.
Now, what did your father do for a living?
At first he was the chief editor of Science and Mechanics, Popular Mechanics and Mechanics Illustrated magazines out of Chicago. And then when he came up here, he became the chief engineer at a company called John Thomas Batts, and was able to help them develop the machinery that needed to be had to make the garment hanger business prosperous for Mr. Batts.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you finished high school then in what year?
75.
Okay.
Then I did year and a half at Ferris State University in Big Rapids, and I was in auto machine. And then I decided that in March of 77 that I would go into the Coast Guard. And from there, out of Grand Rapids, I ended up going to Cape May, New Jersey.
Now, what motivated you to join the Coast Guard?
I wanted to upgrade my captain's license. At that point in time, I had a captain's license for the chain ferry that runs back and forth down in Saugatuck. It's a wonderful summer job for a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of chicks go back and forth. No, but anyway, no. I mean,
kind of a limited prospect for promotion there.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, and so I talked to the captain of the Mistress, who was the captain of the vessel that was for Coral Gables. I said, I want your job. How do I do it? Go get sea time. Take the test. Understand it's going to be a long haul. So, I was not, let's just say I didn't appreciate what my poor country had gone through before my time of my enlistment, being involved in a police campaign, as they called it.
Mm-hmm.
The name actually being Vietnam. I did not want to be in that division of the services.
Mm-hmm.
Coast Guard save people. They help people. That's the type of human being I am. I mean, I love to help people.
So the original suggestion maybe was to go into the Navy, or at least just either Navy or Coast Guard.
Navy still kill people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't kill people.
Right.
I love people. Coast Guard saves people.
But the fellow who recommended that you told you go get sea time,
Right.
was he thinking Navy at that point? Or?
No, he was actually, he said, you know what? He says, why don't you go into the Coast Guard?
Mm-hmm.
They're the people that give the test for your captain's license.
Okay.
You'll get it firsthand. And when you get all through, you just go on up to Ludington and take the test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What sort of impression, have you alluded to this already, what kind of impression did you have of the military generally at that point?
I did not appreciate that we had to go to other countries and decimate human beings so that somebody else could have freedom or be able to take over and put in a different type of political society,
Mm-hmm.
which might be at the same or even worse.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yes, I protested in Chicago in 1968. I was 12 years old, and I got tear gassed in Grant Park. It was a bummer.
How did you wind up there? You were living up in Michigan at that point, right?
Well, I went on in because friends of my folks, I went to stay at Pete's house, my buddy,
Mm-hmm.
and war in Santana which were big groups back
Yeah.
in them days, were in Grant Park. I went down there for the concert.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I know, there's tear gas and anti-war protesting going on. I got a real foul taste in my mouth. Literally. And the Buckingham Fountain is where I had to wash my face. It wasn't any fun.
All right, so you're an accidental witness to that piece of history.
Just wrong place, wrong time. And so, thusly, I don't want to go work for somebody that causes violence. I'm a peaceful man. Man, I'm a hippie. Come on, give me a break. You know?
All right. Okay, so Coast Guard it is then. All right. Now, where do you go then for your training?
Cape May, New Jersey was where I did my boot camp. And then from there, my first station was at Group Saint Petersburg in Saint Petersburg, Florida.
All right. Well, describe the boot camp experience first. What do they do in the Coast Guard in the 70s?
We make the Marines look like pups. 18 weeks, longest boot camp that there is. Hardest boot camp there is. Any military personnel that has ever gone through boot camp respects Coast Guard. It's 18 weeks of grueling physical, mental, educational, because you got to be able to go out and help people and save people, and that means jumping out of a helicopter or off the side of a boat to save somebody's life and not lose yours. You have to be in top physical condition. We worked constantly.
Now, would they take you, at that stage, would they try to take you out to sea in bad weather, or would that come later? Or?
No, boot camp was just on land.
Okay. So that's just the physical conditioning and
Just the physical conditioning. Done more push-ups than people got pores on their face. But I mean, the whole 9 yards. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, back pulls. You know, you have to be in good physical condition.
Did they put a lot of emphasis on military discipline, following orders, that kind of thing?
A little bit. A little bit. You understood that what you were going to be going on into, that you had to obey the rules, and whoever gave you the rules, that's the way it was. But as far as the military discipline, organizational type idea thing, not too much.
So there wasn't like sort of a lot of hazing type stuff and
No,
arbitrary
never,
push-up assignments and
never,
that kind of thing. Okay,
never
didn't
saw
work
it
that
at
way.
all.
All right. Yeah. What kind of people did they have training you? Were these senior CPOs or whatever they have in the Coast Guard? I mean, were they senior non-coms or?
Oh, well, boot camp, you go on in, you're an E1.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through medical training, CPR, basic first aid, and even major first aid. The stupidest thing in the world that anybody can ever ask you is, how do you stop a chest sucking wound
Oh.
from a hole going into your chest? You know what the film taught me?
What?
Take off the wrapper of a cigarette pack and stick your finger into the hole. The person will breathe. That's emergency medical technician. You got nothing else out there. You're there on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep that person alive till somebody else gets there that can do a better job. That's what you were trained in.
All right.
Emergency medical technician, any way possible to save a human life.
Okay.
And that's one thing I enjoyed so much. I wasn't taking a life.
Mm-hmm.
I had the ability to save a life.
Now, what kind of guys were you training alongside? Where did they come from? What sort of backgrounds do they have, as far as you could tell?
Oh, I would say that, maybe 80% were middle class, had worked in their life, graduated high school, maybe gone and done some college. They were, I don't mean to be rude, but they were intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
People that were not necessarily outstanding, but they were definitely from a good social background.
Mm-hmm.
Came from good families type idea thing. Not putting anybody down, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there might have been some people in there that had to go through some tough knocks, but you get through boot camp, it's a whole different story.
Yeah. Now, what proportion of them get through boot camp? Did people wash out in the process?
Not many.
Okay.
Not many. Because when you talk to the recruiter, he tells you, this is the roughest. The Marines respect you when you say, I was in the United States Coast Guard, and I went through boot camp in Cape May, or Alameda out west. I've talked to Marines, and they're going, good job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or Army, or Navy, or...
So
you know,
if they were going to drive people away, the recruiters tried to get rid of
filter
them
you
first.
out.
Yeah, okay. So you get through that. So you get 18 weeks of that. What did they do with you then? So now they send you down to Saint Petersburg. Was that your
Right.
first assignment?
You had like a week's leave to go home and get things together. And like I said, my first station was in St. Pete at Group Saint Petersburg, Florida, which was in charge of the whole west coast of Florida as far as the Coast Guard was concerned.
Mm-hmm. And what were your duties there?
I started out on a buoy tender, and my first thing I got to do was scrape slime off of buoys that could fit inside this roof. They were 826s. They're 8 foot across and they're 26 foot long.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the aids to navigation for the west coast of Florida, Tampa Bay, Clearwater, Fort Myers, anything like that. That's what we were in charge of. And then you painted them. It's grunt work, but I never said I started at the top.
Right. So when you're doing that kind of work, have they taken the buoys off their moorings and brought them in, or do you go out there and try to haul them out of the water and work on them?
No, actually, the White Sumac, which is the vessel I was on, we'd snatch hold of the buoy, get a hold of the anchor chain, pull the weight on up, which was a piece of concrete that was basically 8 feet by 8 feet by 4 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Put that off to the side, the buoy came on deck, we secured it on down so nobody would get hurt. You scraped it, you changed the light bulbs, you checked the batteries, you painted it, and then you figured out how to put it back in location. Being an apprentice, or striking as they call it, for a quartermaster, I had to learn how to use a sextant horizontally and be able to take 4 points, crisscross them, so the buoy went back exactly where it belonged. It was a learning experience, but I wanted to be a navigator and I wanted to be in the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I had to start.
All right. What other kinds of things did you do at St. Petersburg?
That was it for St. Pete.
Mm-hmm. How long were you doing that?
A year and a half.
So a year and a half was just buoy duty?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All
Got to
right.
take care of the west coast of Florida.
All right. Now, did they have you stationed on shore, or would you be sleep on the ship sometimes, or how did that work?
Oh, you were allowed to have an off-base apartment because there was no real base housing
Mm-hmm.
as far as that was concerned. Or you could stay on board, but sleeping with 10 to 16 stinky guys was not my idea of a good evening. Now, I didn't mind having an apartment that was 2 blocks away, that was very reasonable, you know.
Yeah, what was pay like for a very junior Coast Guardsman at that point?
Let me think. $278 every 2 weeks, so that's $450, $550, you know, in that range for a month.
Mm-hmm. And how much of that would have to go for housing?
Oh, it was $70 a week.
Okay.
This is back in
About half.
'77.
Yeah.
I mean, gas was 30 cents back then. Might have been cheaper than that.
Not in '77, to be fair.
Well, okay, but you
Not
know what I
that
mean.
young.
I mean, things were a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, they were. But that would be. But also, I guess since you're with the Coast Guard, you get a certain number of your meals and things like that while you're on duty. You're not feeding yourself all the time.
No, I mean, you could, if you got on the boat early in the morning, you could have your breakfast, you could have your lunch, and if you wanted to hang around, you could have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But usually about Liberty time at 3:30, most of us were ready to go to our apartments,
Mm-hmm.
shower, put on civilian clothes, relax, maybe head on down to a local eating and refreshment establishment, and hang out.
Now, would you have a night shift to pull sometimes? I mean, would they rotate your schedule?
Oh, the duty was what they call 1 and 3. So every third day you had to stay on board,
Mm-hmm.
and you stood watch. And there's not too much to a watch when you're tied up to a dock, but somebody's got to be awake. There could be a fire, there could be an accident, there could be somebody coming on board that doesn't need to be there. That was, it was duty.
Yeah.
That's why they call it duty.
Okay. All right. So did you have any sort of unusual incidents happen while you were on duty at night there in St. Pete, or were your
No,
shifts just quiet?
It was pretty quiet. You sat in the mess deck, the galley.
Mm-hmm.
You watch TV or listen to the radio. Guys would come on board, and hey, how's it going, Murph? What's up, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you tonight? Oh, you were down at the Sunrise. Okay, that's cool. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a tavern.
Yeah.
A
So,
lot of guys had apartments.
mm-hmm.
But some of the younger guys, newer guys, they stayed on board.
Okay. Now, did they have women in the Coast Guard or stationed there?
Not on the boats.
Mm-hmm.
There were female personnel over at the group in Saint Petersburg, which was just
Mm-hmm.
across the harbor,
Right.
and they had different jobs. Anything administrative, supply, cooking, many different jobs. Even working on the small boats. I knew some girls that worked on the small boats that were used in search and rescue.
Mm-hmm.
They chose their duty.
Okay.
It was not wasn't select. You could do whichever you want to.
Mm-hmm. Was this a point where was the Coast Guard having any trouble recruiting at this point, or were they doing okay as far as you could tell?
Sure. I got paid every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Check cleared.
Well, that was the question. Did they have trouble recruiting people to come in?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I mean,
Not that I'm aware of, because every once in a while somebody leave on off the boat, and a new guy come on, and then we got to go through and train them and teach them this, and your bunk is there, and that type idea thing.
yeah. Well, how much effort did they put into training you once you got there? I mean, was somebody actually showing you physically how to do these jobs, or did they just say go do it and then watch and?
Oh no, it's extensive training.
Okay.
Very extensive. The Coast Guard does a very, very good job.
All right. Now, over the course of that year and a half there in St. Petersburg, tending buoys, is the plan or design to move on and do something else, or do you have to lobby to get out of that to go do something else?
You put in a request, and I wanted to go to a small boat station, which does not only search and rescue, but law enforcement as far as contraband that comes in and things of that nature, or maybe even human trafficking, which there was a lot of at one point in time from Cuba, but that was many years later. But small boat stations are nice. It's a family. Same thing on a boat, but you get to sleep in a bed that doesn't move. And the station in Cortez was an old hotel, 20 rooms. It was nice, it was big, it was spacious. Everybody had their own area if they wanted to just get away or whatever. You were very tight knit. When the bell went on off, you scrambled. It didn't matter if it was 1 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. That bell went on off, You grabbed your pants or whatever you needed to do, and you were on that boat within a minute.
Okay.
You scrambled.
Now, was Cortez the first of these stations you got?
Yes.
Okay. And where is Cortez relative to St. Petersburg?
Actually, Cortez is about 16 miles due west of Bradenton,
Okay.
Florida, which is about 20 miles south of St. Petersburg. So I was in the same area.
Okay. Now, is it on right there on the Atlantic coastline, or is it on Tampa Bay, or?
It's actually on the Intercoastal Waterway, which they call the ICW.
Okay.
And that's a small waterway that all the keys that are right up against the Gulf of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And
So it's between them and the mainland then?
correct.
Yeah, okay. Now, okay, how many people were stationed at Cortez, do you think?
35 to 40.
Okay. And did you just have one boat or a bunch of small boats, or?
There were two 41-footers that they had back in those days, and there were two 30-footers. Understand this is a couple decades ago.
Mhm.
They got much better vessels nowadays. A small boat, which would have been like 20 foot long, a Bologna boat. It was called an Avon. And that's all we needed.
Mm-hmm.
We were to assist, or if something was going on in Tampa Bay and we were just right around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we could be there in maybe 3 minutes.
Because you could just go up the intercoastal waterway.
Just go
and
right
get
up
there.
the intercoastal. As Mark always said, he says we're two blocking it, which means you just take it in and put it as fast as it goes. It doesn't matter. It's a no wake zone.
Mm-hmm.
We're the Coast Guard. We're saving somebody's life. We got a little priority here.
Now, can you remember specific missions or jobs that you had there? Or talk about some particular instances where you were to different kinds of missions or rescues, or?
Oh, sure. I remember we had a call come on in from a shrimper, and they had a medical condition, and they didn't know exactly, but we got the call via the group of St. Pete,
Mhm.
because we were closest, and he was in Tampa Bay. Guy was having a heart attack. And so as you think about it, your mind is trying to figure it all on out, and you can't do it that way. You do the way you were trained.
Mm-hmm.
You pump and you blow, you pump and you blow, you pump and you blow till somebody gets there, or they get a helicopter out of Clearwater, Florida, and they'll take them on into Tampa or to St. Pete to the hospital where they can do more to them. Sure. Somebody gets hurt. I remember a guy got hurt on a boat and tore part of his arm up. Well, direct pressure. That's what you do when somebody's bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
You put direct pressure onto it and stop the bleeding as fast as you can. And then we could actually take him,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't a big emergency. I mean, you know, obviously the man was wounded
Mm-hmm.
from working on the boat, but it wasn't like a heart attack or anything like that. I mean, it was, you know.
Now, did you get sort of bad weather rescue jobs when you had to go out into the Gulf and help people who got stuck in storms, or did they not do that for you?
Not really. Not at that station. Because the vessels were not made necessarily to go out in a bad storm in the Gulf. I mean, when you're talking, you know, 7 to 10 footers, you'll beat your head to death in a 41-footer. You could do it. But there's other vessels that are more capable of handling that type of weather.
Mhm.
Similar to the next vessel that I was on.
Okay. And then, did you have to, you mentioned also you're doing sort of law enforcement kinds of things. I mean, did you encounter people trying to smuggle things, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, the word come down from EPIC, which is the Impasto Intelligence Center, and they'd have a list of suspected vessels. They'd already had them on satellite, so they knew what was going on down. As soon as they come inside 12 miles, they're ours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had them in Tampa Bay, and they were carrying 60 tons. And yes, they are Colombian coffee bags.
Mm-hmm.
But there's these funny little twigs sticking out of them. Don't know. Look like marijuana to me. Never saw any cocaine or nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it was just pot.
Did you
And that
ever?
was given to us.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you ever have anybody try to fight back?
No.
Okay.
The only time I ever ran into any problems was that, like I said, when they were giving it to us, whatever they were running on up the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
What they had in the Gulf, or vice versa, was just a decoy.
Mm-hmm.
It was a gimme. But I had some Colombians that didn't speak English, and at that point in time, being the lead boarding officer and being absolutely direct representative of the DEA, guy motion, just sit back here and sit down. You know, you gotta use hand signals and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Guy went to get on up, I threw the shotgun up in the air, I grabbed it, I wrapped the shell, I dropped it to my hip, I looked at him. My hand was on the trigger, the safety was on off. I don't care, buddy, I'll blow your ass away. It don't matter to me. And he froze, he sat on down. No problem, put the safety back on, things are fine. No big deal.
All right. How long did you stay at Cortez?
I was at Cortez for about 8 months, and then I had a chance to go to Sarasota, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
onto the Point Thatcher, which is an 82-foot patrol boat. Good duty.
Okay.
Sarasota, Florida, real bad place. Oh yeah, didn't like riding a motorcycle down Lido Key. Nah, it was bad there. Sun, yeah, bad. Mm-hmm. It was one of the better duties that I had, actually.
All right. Now, how was the duty any different from Cortez? What was different about being on that kind of ship?
Well, we didn't have a nice, spacious hotel to live in. You either slept on the boat, or you had to go get an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I chose to get an apartment. It was, get off the boat for a little while, get away
Mm-hmm.
from it, because we're going on out, we're going for 3 to 7 days.
Okay.
And you get tired of it. I don't care if you're doing, search and rescue, law enforcement, or it's just your turn to patrol the west coast of Florida. You get tired of being in a space that's size of a small bedroom with 6 other guys.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sort of just have your own space, go into your own refrigerator, put something on dinner,
Mm-hmm.
just relax.
Yeah. Now, describe a little bit some of the missions. So you go out for 3 to 7 days. What are you doing while you're out there?
We always called it hiding behind the palm trees. And no, there's no palm trees in the Gulf of Mexico. What we were doing is that we were patrolling past the 12-mile limit and looking for suspected vessels of carrying contraband or humans. And we just would go anywhere from Key West, the Dry Tortugas, which is a really nice spot in the world,
Mm-hmm.
all the way on up to Clearwater.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just be out patrolling, just similar to the way a law enforcement official does on any of our highways.
Mm-hmm.
He's not out there because he's been called, he's just doing a patrol.
Right. Now, did you have any interesting incidents happen while you were out in these patrols?
Well, 160 tons was fun. We waited till she got on in past the 12 mile. I remember being on the wheel, and my master chief Master Chief J.W. Waters. We were in the wheelhouse, and we were out there, and I said, Chief, isn't that the Mary Jane? That was the name of the vessel, and we pulled her over before, and she was full. And
But
she was
wouldn't Mary Jane be a really bad name for a boat in that line of work?
I didn't paint the stern.
Mm.
I didn't paint the stern, and it wasn't my vessel. But before, she was a Miss Port Canaveral.
Okay.
And I told the Master Chief, I said, Master Chief, I said, that looks like the Port Canaveral. He goes, you think so? I said, look at the rigging. I said, I was on board there. I jumped on board in 8-foot seas. I said, I know what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, get a hold of Steve, let's go. I'll be damned if underneath that ice there wasn't some more bales of marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
About 30 tons worth. You know. I mean, they had the shrimp on the top and the ice and the whole 9 yards, and I just, she's sitting too low in the water. She doesn't look right. You know? And I'm going, something just don't feel right here. Get a shovel and say, damn it, Steve, you know what? There's a burlap bag down there. And I popped myself up the hole, and I looked at the Master Chief, and I said, Chief. He goes, you know what you gotta do? Round everybody on up, give them their rights, you know. We gotta wait for somebody else to come on out here and take care of the situation, but we get credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
The Point Thatcher had the most amount of tonnage while I was on board, which would have been 78 and 79, than any other vessel on the west coast of Florida. Maybe we were just lucky, I don't know. Or we were going at it with a vengeance. That's the way it goes.
So on a ship of that size, do they only have a couple of officers, or is it your?
You got an E9 Master Chief, which is captain.
Okay.
You got a Chief Petty Officer for the engine room, which is an MK. Then you got a First Class Bosun Mate, which is the XO, second in charge. You got a Third Class Petty Officer, which is a cook. And then you got 6 of us little grunt guys that do all the work.
Mm-hmm. But it can be any of you doing pretty much any job on the ship.
Painting, cooking, going down into the bilges, you know, looking for a leak, helping out an MK, because I was skinny enough back in them days that I could actually slide underneath a V16 Cummins motor and tell them what I saw. And you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
There is no specialization as to say in the Coast Guard. There is, but you still have to learn everything else because that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it is. You learn it all.
Right. Now, how often, if you're going out on a patrol 3 days, 7 days, whatever, how often do you actually run into something interesting? Is it like one voyage out of every 3, or is it pretty much every time you go out, or?
Once in a blue moon.
Okay.
If you're lucky, maybe you get 7 to 8 hits a year.
And then
The rest of the time you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're being at the ready to be able to serve if something happens off of Fort Myers
Mm-hmm.
or wherever, and there's somebody in peril and danger. You're there.
Mm-hmm.
That's your major duty. Law enforcement is the duty of the Coast Guard, but search and rescue has priority because you're taking care of human lives, and that's what the Coast Guard does.
So how often would you get called to do that?
Oh,
Search
probably
and rescue
probably
crew.
1 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go out in the storms. You know, if we were tied up at the dock and we knew there was a storm coming on out, and we got a call from the group, that meant that whoever the watchstander was, say it was myself,
Mm-hmm.
I get on the phone. I didn't have cell phones back in them days, and you called everybody and say, "Hey, we got to be out there in an hour. Let's go."
Mm-hmm.
And everybody came on in, parked the cars, locked them on up, jumped on board, started up the motors, you know. Let's go. That's what we're supposed to do.
Are any of those kinds of rescue jobs particularly memorable? Kind of stand out and think
I
about?
remember a guy that was on a shrimper, and we were nearby because we knew all of them. I mean, you ran into them all the time, you know, out there. And a block, which was a pulley, came loose from the deck and hit him in the chest and basically split his sternum. And they knew that we were in the area and they called us. And no problem, we'll be right there. You know, I mean, do what you can for them. And I hopped on overboard, and Eddie hopped on over, and we're looking at him, and I glanced back up at the Master Chief, and I'm going, you know, we're going to need a helo on this one. You know, we needed to have helo ops now. Call Clearwater. You know, and actually they were already on the way. The only thing that I could do was to take a plastic bag and tape it to his chest, stop the bleeding, and so he could breathe right.
Yeah.
And when the drop comes on down, and the guy's looking at me, he goes, "Where'd you learn that?" I said, "Not from the Red Cross." I said, "I learned it from a paramedic." I said, "It's like using a cigarette wrapper to do a sucking chest wound. Piece of plastic and duct tape. You can save a human life." They put him in the gurney, they popped him on up, they popped the diver on up, they took on off. I got back on board and we just went on a merry way. I mean, we just doing what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And then we get a call 2 days later, and the Master Chief's talking to the captain, and the captain needed some ketchup because they didn't have any ketchup. No big deal. We give him half a case of ketchup. He throws over 3 bags that are about 3 foot by about 1.5 foot, fresh shrimp. So what was everybody doing the rest of that afternoon? Peeling shrimp, and you learn how to do it real quick. And that's what we ate.
All right. Now, how long did you have that assignment?
I was on board the Thatcher. Well, whatever the remainder of the time would have been, like 13, 14 months, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And then I was due to get out. But I'd been transferred back to the group to do administrative liaison. They wanted to give me some nice duty. And actually it was for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And it was only going to be like 2 months, so they were just giving me, you know,
Yeah.
here's a gravy job for your last 2 months. I think about re-upping. I call up my detailer. I said, "Mr. Hall," I said, "I got 72 hours left in this man's Coast Guard." I said, I would like to have an icebreaker. Can you find me one?" He says, 2 weeks, report to Wilmington, North Carolina. You'll be on the U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Northwind. She's a 283 foot icebreaker. you'll be the third quartermaster or navigator aboard. They're losing one, and you're going to take the spot. I said, thank you. And I took 2 weeks leave. I came back here to West Michigan. I deserved it. I re-upped. I had to move everything out of Florida. I had to figure out where to do with it, bring back, regroup. What am I going to take? What am I not going to take? You know, am I going to have an apartment there? I got to get all these things figured out. And so I left about 5 days early. Found a nice little place in Wilmington. I had a nice van. Unpacked, got my act together, reported a day early. It was good duty. If you like being gone for 3 to 6 months. Icebreakers don't make short trips.
Mm-hmm.
When you go up around Greenland, on both sides of Greenland, and you head on up into the Arctic to do Arctic surveys, they have scientists on board, the whole 9 yards with labs and everything. And you're breaking on into a place like Thule, Greenland, which is northwest Greenland, so the supply vessels can get into an air sac base. And this is a big base. We're talking huge. You know, Air Force, Army, Marines, the whole 9 yards. And our early protection system that guards us from the Cold War era of in case anything came over the top of the earth.
Why did you want to get onto an icebreaker?
I needed more sea time. I needed more tonnage. I needed more sea time because, like I said before, I had a captain's license. Still do. And with the sea time that I would have gotten from a icebreaker, which is global, you do the South Pole, you do the North Pole. I was able to obtain, after I was discharged, an unlimited master's license, which means anything, anywhere. Now, we're not talking LGN, which is 1,200 foot, but I mean any pleasure vessel, any the ferry that goes across the back and forth in the lake here, over to Manitowoc, I believe it is. Yeah, I'm licensed for that. I wouldn't want to take that man's job because I wouldn't know how to handle that thing until I had a few hours on the helm there, you know.
All right, so this is sort of part of that original career plan you had going in. All right. Okay. So, so what's life like on the icebreaker then when you go off on one of these missions?
The first thing you do is find your own little nook. And I mean the place to have to yourself. Because you just need to have your own space. Write letters home and stuff like that. But I mean, the duty, I've seen stuff geographic is never shown. I've been through fjords in southern Greenland to save a day's worth of sailing. But to the south part of Greenland, that the mountains, which were the most jagged vertical things I'd ever seen in my life, were over 8,200 feet tall, straight up, no problem. You fall, it's over. That's it. You can't climb it. Or going right around on over to the east coast of Greenland, to a small little place, an Eskimo village, called Amastlink. We broke in there so that the Danes could get on in because they had those them super tanks, the kind that are 500 foot across. You know, the big ones, real big ones, because there's oil out there, and they need to pick it on up and take it back to, you know, wherever they need to take it to. Well, went to the small little Eskimo village. I mean, itty bitty. And we were allowed to get off the boat. Well, cool, let's walk on real land for a while, you know, and enjoy ourselves. I ran into a little Eskimo girl that maybe was like 14, 15 years old. But she spoke broken English, which, because I don't speak a word of Greenlandic Eskimo. I don't, it's not my gig. And so that I told her that, is there any way that I could get some ivy? Because the word is that because they do harvest seals to be able to live and exist, they have tusk that they remove, and they also do seal skins. And she helped me on out. I ended up meeting her brother and a friend of him and all that. I got some cute little statues, like a totem pole thing. I got a piece of seal skin, as a souvenir.
Right.
It was cool. I mean, it was a little perk for the stop. And then from there, we went all the way on up on the north side of the east coast of Greenland, and we had a helicopter on board, dropped scientists over on a glacier, and they would take out cubic yards of ice and put them into special thermal boxes to analyze them. And one of the things that they found was plankton and actually leaf growth in a glacier. And they deducted that because this was over 60,000 years old, that the idea that the Earth might have shifted its axis at one point in time was probable. And, we're telling them, what do you mean probable? The Earth moved, and I ran into one of the scientists and I said, what are you trying to say? There is a probability that the Earth might have actually shifted its axis at one point in time or the other. Or why would you have green vegetation this far north? Well, okay. I'm thinking a bird went by and dropped it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I would believe the man because he was a respected scientist. And when we did trips like that, we always had at least 3 scientists on board, and they would do different things that they had to do, and not just for papers, but for real things that need to be known.
How many voyages did you make on the icebreaker?
Oh gosh, 25 to 30.
How long were you in the Coast Guard?
10.
Okay.
And our last trip, and this is a sea story, but it is a true sea story. We our last trip, we were on the east coast of Greenland, and we hit a growler. The growler is the part of the iceberg that is under the water. Remember, icebergs are, 5 to 7/8 underwater, and there was an arm sticking on out. And we hit it pretty hard. It threw guys out of the rack. And next morning we're getting ready for helo ops, and I'm up on the bridge wing, and I'm looking around, checking everything on out, and I see something brown in the water. And so I call on down to the chief, down in the engine room. I said, are you pumping the sanitation system? He goes, of course not. I said, please come up here. I told the seaman, I said, go get me a lead line and a rag now. This is important. He came right back with it. I lowered it on down. I had a senior chief ask me what I was doing, thinking I was screwing off. And I pulled it on up, and when it was about 4 feet from me, I could smell it. It was diesel fuel.
Oh.
And he's getting ready to book my butt thinking I'm just screwing around when I should actually be doing something inside the bridge and getting ready for helo-offs, which is very important. You know, chances of fire and all that. I mean, you know, it's pretty tight when you start launching things on off a deck. And the captain came on out and he said, "Youngquist, what the hell's going on?" I took the rag and I held it on out. He looked at me. I nodded. I took the rag, put it in a bag, called on down to the engine room. I said, "Secure everything. Shut this damn boat down now because we got leaking fuel. And we're a long ways from anywhere. There ain't no Sunoco station around the corner. There ain't no fire truck around the corner. You know, there ain't a tugboat within 1,500 miles. We're in deep trouble." The chief was already on up there. He goes, "Is that what I think it is?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You better start switching tanks. Because there's 8 tanks that run along the sides of the North Wind.
Mm-hmm.
When they fill on up, they hold over 300,000 gallons of fuel. That's the weight that is used for an icebreaker to ride up onto the ice, and the weight actually crushes it. It's not like taking an ice pick and hitting an ice cube. It's the actual weight of the vessel.
As you use the fuel, do they pump seawater in to replace it to keep up the weight, or?
Nope. They emptied the tank on out into the other tanks, and a good friend of mine, once they vented the tank and got oxygen in there, Bill Williams, he was a huge man. He was Cajun. Could barely get on into the damn tank, but he went on down there. He sealed the inside of the tank with a arc welder. He went on the outside. We had 5 people with M16s because the polar bear tracks that we seen around in the area, the paw is big as my chest. We're talking real polar bears here. We ain't talking Brookfield Zoo or whatever. I mean, we're talking a real carnivorous animal that can smell garbage or a human being from 5 to 8 miles. Bill was on down there, and he welded armor plating, welded it on up. We got it all ready. We went back up. We went and we had to go on into Scotland and to Glenlockett, to a shipyard. They put us on in. They drained the water. They checked everything. They told us that they couldn't do it that good. And Bill got his name in the Guinness Book of World Records as the furthest north repair ever done in the world. And Bill just a big old country boy. I mean, you know what I mean? He knows what he's doing. But I mean, he nice country guy. I mean, he's a simple man. But he knew his job.
Right.
Armor plate's hard to weld. I mean, I can tack soft steel together, but I can't do armor plating. There's a special talent to do that. But Bill got his name in the damn Guinness Book, and I thought we heard that. And by the time we got back home, which is like a month later, in the mail there was a certificate for him from the Guinness Society, and he was embarrassed. I mean, the man was so humble. Like, I don't want nothing. What are you doing to me? You know, why are you doing this to me? You know? And we wouldn't say too much and just say, "Good job, Bill." Because we did too much, he'd feel bad.
Right. Now you also got to the South Pole?
We made one south trip. Went through the ditch, Panama, and went on down. And once again, because the Polar Sea and the Polar Star, which are on the west coast, they were in the yards, and so we had to get to do it. 6 months and nothing but fun. You get tired of looking at the same faces after 6 months, and you only got 282 feet somewhere to walk around.
And it's not like there's a whole lot of places to stop along the way either.
That there ain't somebody else already there. I used to climb the stick and go up into the crow's nest and smoke a cigarette and hang out, because I know I didn't have no duty for a while or whatever. And nobody would miss me, but I had peace. I had quiet. I was able to look up at the old man up top side and going, thank you, I need a little rest and relaxation here for a little while. You know, because you got to keep it together.
Now, what was the purpose of your going down to the South Pole?
Just to break in for supplies.
Okay, so you get to the bases so they can resupply.
I mean, we weren't cracking nothing thick.
Mm-hmm.
It was only 25.
Only 25 feet of ice?
Yeah.
Only?
It's not much.
Okay. I don't know, how thick a sheet could that icebreaker break?
We did 35 up in Thule. Now, we were only making 5 miles a day, but we were cracking 35 once. And I mean no offense, but I used to have a T-shirt, and U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Northwind, and on the back it says breaker sailors back in Ram. Well, that's the way you do it. You right up on the ice, you break. You back on up. You right up on the ice, you break. So if you can make 5 miles in a day, you're doing good. You're doing real good.
And when you went back out, you'd have to break the ice all over again going the other way, right? It wouldn't stay open for you.
It's already been fractured, so you can basically go through it.
Yeah. So it's not going to get back to being in 20 feet thick or something like that.
No. It's still there that thick, but it's not adhered to itself.
Okay.
The fun part is that if your berthing area, your sleeping area, is in the aft, which where mine was, and I was by the port screw, or the left-hand screw, when you went through ice, rattle, rattle, bang, boom.
Yeah.
Well, this wheel, you got to understand, this wheel was 20 foot across. Three propped, but 20 foot across. It's a workhorse. It's an icebreaker. It's not little motorboat you run around. You know, I mean, we're talking something that's got to move lots of tonnage and it's got to be able to do it.
So you don't sleep much then?
You just get used to it.
Okay.
You hear a piece going through the screws, you don't worry about it. I mean, it's better than listening to the guy above you snoring. You know that sound will go away. The ice will go away, you can go back to bed.
Now, don't the physical conditions get pretty hard? I mean, if you're sailing around in the Arctic and you get any kind of weather, cold, freezing everything.
It's along the lines, it's a whole different type of atmosphere than there is in the lower latitudes of the world, as to say. First of all, it's dry. It's incredibly dry.
Because there's no moisture in the air because it's so cold? Yeah.
None.
Okay.
But yet, the moisture that is in your skin, if you don't have it covered, you can lose layers of skin in 30 seconds and just flake it off. I mean, it'll dry that skin on out and freeze it. You wear a full Arctic mask, which is a thermal mask that the only thing that there's an opening for is your eyes, and even those you can pull down and close over. You don't stay out there long. I mean, you got to go out there and take temperatures, barometric pressure, wind direction. You got to, because all this gets reported on into NOAA. because you're the only one there. And they still compile that information. And it's hand-on information. It's not a satellite assuming at 36 miles above the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to do a wet bulb, which is a water wet down thermometer, and a dry bulb, your barometric pressure, your wind, your sun angle or declination, and existing conditions. Most of that you can do from the inside, but you got to go outside for the thermometer. But that's what you do. It's your job. I mean, I couldn't be down in that damn engine room sweating, because it's 120 degrees down there. And that's with the fans on. You got two V16 Cumminses working. I go down there once in a while, but I'm going, how the hell do you stand this? He goes, I couldn't stand where you're at, man. How do you stand it? I said, you get used to it. You get used to the environment that you have to work in. That's all part of it.
All right. This tape is about a couple times down to the South Pole area once. Now, when you went down to the South Pole, did you get to stop any place aside from the Panama Canal in between, or were you always just out at sea?
No, we were out to sea. We made a quick zip on down. Went in, snapped ice. I was hoping we'd either get New Zealand or Australia, like the Polar Sea or the Polar Star gets. We didn't get that.
Oh.
Nah.
No.
Because our actual duty is the north. The only thing I did get to do different was we got to go through the Horn.
Okay.
South end of South America, which is supposed to be some of the roughest water in the world. It was pretty calm. I mean, it was chop. It was only like 8 feet.
Now, were you out in open ocean, the Drake Passage south of the whole thing, or did you actually go in there closer to the coast, in between the islands and the southern tip?
Oh no, we went from the ditch right straight on down and went on the backside and went in and snapped ice.
Yeah, so you just back through, but when you came back and you went around the Horn, you just went through open ocean.
Right, and then went around the Horn and then back on up. I mean,
yeah, they didn't let you stop and
I
yell
was
along the
hoping
way.
we could stop off in Colombia, man. I wanted to,
Yeah.
I'm joking, but
I think you'd have been a little tired of Colombians by then. I don't know.
I just want what they grow. We were joking about that. I said, you know what? They ain't gonna give us liberty here anywhere in South America. First of all, we'll all end up in jail and we'll never get out. And we'll be lucky if we only got one hit. So, I mean, that was a standard running joke. I mean, when you're out that long, you got to find things to entertain each other with. I mean, and come up with good, quick one-liners. And then all of a sudden you hear it 2 hours later, and you're going, I was talking to Murph about that 2 hours ago. How the hell did you get it? I mean, it's just you gotta stay awake, you gotta stay alert, and you gotta keep your mind on the ball. I don't care if you're on an icebreaker, 41 footer, an 82 footer, or a damn helicopter dropping on down doing helo ops. If you're not on the ball, you're going to hurt somebody. Or yourself. And that's not what it's about. You have to stay on the ball. You have to have a mental alertness that is tweaked like a fine, sharp knife. Because I'm not putting down anybody or anything else. I mean, I'm just saying that's the way that I had to do it, and a lot of the guys that I served with. It's like, well, if you go someplace, you can tell a vet. You can just look in the eyes and know. And you don't even need to say anything. Just nod. Don't know what you were in, don't know what you did, don't need to go through the story, but hey man, I served too. And you always smile. I mean, because you always get a smile on back like, yeah, you too, man.
Right.
That's part of it.
Yeah. Now, thus far as we've gone through your story, we actually skipped over some stuff back when you were based down in Florida and some of the more dramatic episodes that you had to deal with. Because you wound up with a couple of pretty substantial disasters that you had to deal with when you were stationed down there. You also managed to get yourself into a motorcycle accident, and which complicated some of that stuff.
Well, I had the right of way, and a 72 Chrysler and a 68-year-old lady running the stop sign and broadsiding you. Guess who won? Wasn't me. 4 compound fractures right leg, 2 breaks in the hip, sternum split, skull fracture front to back. 2 minutes and 53 seconds out the door. I'm talking about, I remember the stairway. I'm talking about the stairway to heaven, and I ain't Led Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one thing I remember. Job not done. 2 weeks later, I woke up out of a coma. They had pins sticking in and out of my leg. Tried to keep my leg together. They wanted to take it off. I got out of the hospital bed. They put me back in the bed. I got out of the bed again. They tied me with epileptic cuffs. I snapped 3 sets. And the psychologist said that my will to live and walk was so strong that the adrenaline that was going through my body was like water coming out of a waterfall. And I had this strength. The last time they caught me, I was 25 feet away from a cab that I had waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
They threw me back in bed. The captain came on over and he says, "Youngquist, we got a problem." I said, "No, Captain, we ain't got a problem. They got a problem. They want to amputate my leg." He says, "I'm sending you on over to MacDill in Tampa." No problem. Doctor walked on in, was the 3rd best orthopedic surgeon in the United States of America, named Ernesto Nieto, Colonel.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, "You get out of bed, I'll cut it off. You do what I say, you'll walk."
Still
My
going
guy, it works.
Yep.
And that was over 30 years ago. Ernie did good.
All right. Now, at the time the accident happened, were you sort of on the base duty, or were you still in? What was your assignment at that time?
Oh, I was at base Saint Pete.
Yeah.
But I was on Liberty,
Okay.
and I went to a friend's house, and he was preoccupied with a different situation, and I wasn't as cute as her, and so I was going to go back to the Sunrise, which was a local tavern that a lot of us hung out at, and I come rolling on through. I had the right of way. Little old lady.
Yep.
Broadsided me. And like I said, I had 4 compounds down there. And my right leg, my tibia, my fibia. My hips were snapped on both sides. Had a skull fracture. My sternum was split. I was a little messed up.
Now, how long did you wind up spending in hospitals for that?
Let's see. That happened September 10th, 79. And I walked on my own with a healed leg May 5th, 80.
Now, with an injury that bad, I would normally expect that any branch of the service would figure that you'd have to retire at that point or whatever for medical reasons.
Well,
but what happened with you?
They thought about that, and they sent me on over to New Orleans. There ain't no Leans, it's New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for a medical survey. They were going to figure out if they were going to discharge me, what they were going to do with me, because 3 out of the 4 breaks had knitted back together. But one in my tibia, which is your shin bone, had not.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to figure it out. They'd already gotten the osteomyelitis out of it, which is bone cancer and everything. Plates had been removed and all this kind of stuff. And I got a article from my dad from Omni magazine. And maybe I shouldn't mention the magazine, but anyway, I received an article about something that was new in the United States. Now this was like January 1980. I'm still in a Hoffman brace, which means my leg's up in the air. In order for me to get out of the bed, it requires nurses and stuff like that. And it was about a thing called a bone growth stimulator. And I read it. My orthopedic surgeon came on in. We were on a first name basis. And I said, Doug, look at this. I handed it to him. He took a look at it and he says, Gord, can I keep this for a few days? Sure, man, why not? What am I going to do with it? I've already read it. You know, Dr. David Morris had perfected a way of healing bones through electrical implants. Nowadays, it's common stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He came on back an hour later and he says, I'll see you in a week. I'm going, where the hell are you going? He says, I'm going on up on the East Coast to Boston and I'm going to learn how to put this into you. You'll be the 3rd person in the United States to have bone growth stimulator implants put on into your body. And I get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, see you, Doug.
Yeah.
You know, he came on back. He went through the procedure with me, what it was going to be done, how it was going to be done. And I said, okay, you know, no problem. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to give me a general, and I said, not a chance. And Doug looked at me and he goes, I have to. I said, no, you don't. I said, you give me a local. You give me a local and you give me a glucose, saline, IV. I said, and you put it into my leg, I want to watch. And he says, you're nuts. I said, I'm the 3rd person in the United States to have this done. I want to watch. And he goes, you are crazy. And I said, yes, I am. But I want to watch. And I watched him do it. I didn't interrupt him in the procedure or anything like that. He put in the wires, drilled them on into my bone, took them, connected wires to that, put the battery pack up by my knee, and an anode pad for the ground strap, put a cast on me and says, don't walk on it. 6 weeks later, it had filled over a 1/4 of an inch gap, and it was cured.
Wow.
I came on back. I went upstairs. I got x-rays. I came down. He gave me a slip to go get x-rays. I gave him x-rays. There was a Tulane University out of New Orleans was sponsoring this hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a professor there. And he said, who the hell is this kid? And he's been here, okay? He's been here for a long time. He knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he put him on up. He hit the light. They both looked at it. Doug turned around to me and says, what do you think, doctor? and right, exactly. I mean, you know, come on, I'm no doctor. and I looked at it, I said, I don't see any shadows. I don't see no cracks. I see callousing which is extra growth on the edge of the bone, on the side of the bone. I said, look here to me. He yanked him on out. And he says, walk up to physical therapy and put your ass on into a whirlpool hot tub. I'll give you that one for free. You're discharged. You're out of here. I said, thanks, Doug. I mean, luck, grace of the good man up top side, right place, right time, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I know what happened. I was there, you know, and the old boy up top side says, "No, Gord, we'll let you keep your leg. We'll let you know for a while. Why not? Rest of your life." But that's all right.
Then you get to go back then to Saint Petersburg. After that, do you go
I'm
back?
sorry?
Do you go back to Saint Pete after that? Can you go back?
Oh
on duty now?
yeah, I went back to Saint Pete. I was on full duty, not limited duty. I was able to go back on ship, and I went back on board. I did temporary duty on the Steadfast, which is a 210-foot patrol boat. That's the ones that really go on out there and patrol. Fisheries, contraband, the whole 9 yards. You know, they do Florida, Texas, around past Cuba, Jamaica. You know, they go out for a tour. They're out for a tour. I went aboard her, and it was time to re-on up, and then I headed on over to the Northwind.
Okay. Now, while you were in St. Pete, though, there you were also did rescue work on a couple of kind of larger scale disasters too, right? There was the Blackthorn and the bridge.
As my memory recollects, I hope I got it right. What do you think? Okay. Coast Guard cutter Blackthorn had been in Tampa, in the yards, for like a year and a half or so. Total switch out of a crew. Never ran one damn drill. What they say. I don't know. The Blackthorn was outbound, out of Tampa Bay. Capricorn was inbound. A motor vessel, 680 foot. Storm came up. The pilot did what he was supposed to do and put the anchors at the ready upon the Capricorn, which means they drop them on down and the flukes, the pointy parts, hang out. The storm was so bad they couldn't see. The Capricorn sideswiped the Blackthorn. Tore a hole 40 foot from the waterline up, 80 foot on back. From the impact, she swayed to the starboard, which would be right, went to the port, took on water in 3 decks, went back to the starboard, went back to the port, went back to the starboard, and dropped. 6 people lived out of a full crew. The rest of them drowned.
How many were in the crew?
I believe 282.
Now, what was your connection then to this event?
I was in body recovery. I was requested, actually it was ordered, by a prior captain, an 89 Master Chief, J.W. Waters, that I had served under. And they knew I knew how to run a deck. And I told him, I said, Chief, I said, I'm in a straight leg. And he says, get your ass on board.
Now, why were you in a straight leg at this point?
Because the motorcycle accident that I'd had, where I'd been broadsided by the car from September 10th, 79. So we're talking January of 80.
Okay, so this is before they've fully fixed the leg, but you're back
Right.
on partial
Correct.
duty?
Correct.
At the time? Okay.
I didn't go to New Orleans to have the medical survey until after that, and that would have been like late February, early March.
Okay.
In that ballpark.
All right, but still, you're in a substantial cast, and you can get around.
And I'm on crutches.
You're on crutches, but you're called on to the ship because it's an emergency. All right.
You don't argue with E9s.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you before, there's God, there's Jesus, and there's E9 Master Chiefs, and that's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of them, lieutenants, we don't worry about them. But anyway, sorry, but it's
so
true.
you're going out. Is it still stormy at that point? It's still wet at
No.
night, or is this the next day?
Actually,
now?
upon that day, in Saint Pete, sun was out. It was nice, and the divers. This is the third day after the Blackthorn sunk,
Mm-hmm.
and the divers had located the vessel, and they were ready to do body removal.
Okay.
And so, upon that, we headed on out there. Well, the whole damn group was out there to assist, to block the channel. I mean, the harbor's closed. Ain't nobody going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless you're in a Coast Guard vessel, you ain't going nowhere. The sheriff tried to come on out there, and we told him to get the hell off. Go patrol the intercoastal. You know, we got it taken care of here. We got everybody here. And basically what had happened was that the first POB, the first person that the diver floated over, this is 3 days saltwater.
Mm-hmm.
White skin, fish eat marks, stuff that you don't even see on the Horror Channel. He floated the body on over to me, and he asked me to try to pull it on up. And I had a gunwale I could lean against, and I had help. And I grabbed the hand, and when I grabbed the hand, I tried to pull the body aboard to be able to put it on into a black body bag. The tagging and the names would all be done later on. Somebody else would be doing that. We didn't have time. I pulled on the arm and it came out of the shoulder, and I dismembered a human being. And I never even knew him. To this day, I don't know his name. And I didn't know what to do. I'm sitting there with a human arm in my hands, and I got flesh all over my fingers, and I don't know what to do. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm trying to do, just, put it together quick. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I look down up at JW, and he sees what I'm going through. And I'm just trying to figure it out real quick. I don't got no idea whatsoever. And I'm looking to him for an idea, and he didn't have an idea. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I placed the arm down on the deck. And I went on over, and I opened up a gate valve for 1.5-inch fire hose, and I washed off my hands, I washed my face, and I got my act back together as best I could. And I'm still trying to remember what to do. And I glanced on up, and the boom for the crane that takes the small boat on off the 82-footer is a crane. And it swings back and forth. And in the hold, we have a helicopter basket. They call it a gurney.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the seaman, I said, take the flotation devices off, which is a ring that goes around it.
Right.
And, excuse me, sorry. I hooked it up, or I had them hook it up, actually. I ran the damn crane. I wasn't going to be doing too much moving around, I just throw it over the side. Lowered her. I said, can you put the body into it? Let me know where this mark is for how deep I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a piece of tape so I'd know. Pulled them up. And I said, guys, get the bags. These are black body bags. There's nothing else you're going to do with these human beings. They've been underwater for 3 days in salt water. Roll them into the bag. Zip it. Put them on the bow. The pointy end. And we stacked them like fucking cord of wood. That stack was 6 foot tall, 20 foot across, and 30 feet to the bow. And they were human beings, and I didn't know one of them. I didn't even shake their hands. I never even had a beer with them. But they had to be taken care of, and they had to be taken care of rightly.
And you figured
And
out how to do it.
I don't know, it's the way it goes.
Yeah.
It's the way it goes. And when it was all said and done, and it was all over, and I know I'm going to piss somebody off on saying this, but this is the way it is. When the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard came on by and put meritorious unit commendation medals, not ribbons, and I received one and I glanced down at it, I just simply took my finger, pushed it on off and let it drop to the damn air deck. You don't give me a medal for picking up dead bodies. Save a human life. Go beyond everything that I got. Go to that extra yard. Sure. Maybe I'll take a medal. Maybe. The only medal I ever received was good conduct. And that was just because I didn't get caught for 3 years. The second one is because I didn't get caught the second 3 years. That's a standard old joke. I mean, how'd you get a good conduct? I didn't get caught. But that's the way that situation ended up going down. And there was, I don't know why the Master Chief got a hold of me, because he knew I knew the deck. I knew how to run the equipment. I knew what to do. I wouldn't lose my head.
Yeah.
Because I'd served under him. He knew me. We were first name basis. Hell, we had beers together at the damn bar after we'd get through working.
Well, he would never probably have seen anything like this either. I mean, even though he'd been in longer than you, unless he'd been, because the last war where something of that scale would have happened on a ship would have been probably World War II, unless it was an accident somewhere else.
It was the most horrific nautical disaster that I know of to this date that has ever happened. Maybe there's something worse. Well, okay, no, wait a minute. No, I would be insulting all the veterans of Pearl Harbor, and I apologize. But, I mean, the most peacetime,
yeah.
the word, well, even then that was peace. Okay, let's just say the worst Coast Guard thing that's ever happened.
Yeah, that's quite likely. Well,
now, I can say that and be honest about it.
now, at the time, was there news coverage of it at all, or?
Oh, they were all over. They had helicopters and boats out there in the whole 9 yards. I mean, Saint Pete Times covered it, Tampa Tribune covered it, the Sarasota Herald covered it. They were on it like a wraparound Tootsie Roll.
And did press people try to talk to you, or guys in the rescue crew, or did they just talk to the officers? Or?
We were, the base was restricted, and we were told not to say a damn word. But it'd be handled by the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard or the proper personnel to handle that type of a situation. I never ran into nobody, and if I would have ran into them, I said, I don't know, something sank? We already had it between us. You know, be as stupid as you can be. Be the dumbest person in the whole wide world. But the thing is that the residual effects of doing these duties, and especially that one, is that I never paid any attention to it. I didn't know why after I got out of the Coast Guard, after I was discharged, because I couldn't do my job anymore, because I was not mentally capable of handling it. And then I tried to work in the civilian world, and to this date, I have not held a job over 30 days. Most of them are a week. Some of them are an hour. And I went through a local mental health out of the area where I live, and it sort of going. And then I went to the Veterans Administration, or actually to the VA hospital up in Grand Rapids on Quay Street. And that was like another little niche in it. And when I went to Battle Creek, to the VA hospital, which is connected with the university down there, the man talked to me for 5 minutes, looked at my record, which is about that thick. And he goes, "You have post-traumatic stress disorder. Didn't you know this?" I said, "No. It's been 10 years. I don't know what's wrong with me. I have immediate flashes of anger, rage. I'll cry at a drop of a heartbeat over something I see on TV or something I think about. Hell, I've had people in my living room, and I got water running down my face, and they're telling me, 'Gord, do you realize you're crying?' No. I don't. I can't feel it. Because there are enough veterans out there that know what I'm talking about. Some of them are good friends of mine, a little bit north of here, up towards, well, in between here and the VA. I'm not going to use any names or anything. And we know. You can go on into a local store, get yourself some milk or whatever. You know a vet. You know by looking in his eyes, or her eyes. They know. You look at each other, you nod, and you smile. Because they know. Now the poor guys that are coming on home from the sandbox, system's going to be overwhelmed. Not necessarily with personal injuries, but there's going to be a bunch of people coming back with PTSD.
Yeah.
Because of what they're seeing on over there. And the way that there's, well, with any situation or any conflict, there's obviously mutilation. There's obviously horrific destruction. And some of these people that are over there ain't even 20 years old yet. And to be able to come on home to their fiance, their family, their wife that they just married before they left, and to be able to comprehend it all and put it all in a little box or something, and be able to have a normal life, there ain't no chance. They need help. They need professional help. They need the VA. Because unless you've worn my socks, you don't know. And that's as simple as it gets. Because until you walked in my shoes, as the old saying goes, you don't know where I walked. And you don't know what it's like.
There's more available to them than there used to be, certainly than the Vietnam
They're
days
doing
got.
a fantastic job. And the allotment that has been allocated to go towards the Veterans Administration, and this was done a few years ago, they've thrown in a big gob of money. And they don't even need to ask for it anymore. They're just getting it. The taxpayers are taking care of their people. They're taking care of the poor souls that go on over there that well, there is no draft no more, but you volunteer, you go in the military, and the next thing you're going on over into the sandbox to play, as we call it. And you don't know if you're going to be shooting children, women, old men, young men. Is there a body bomb on somebody? Or are you picking up your buddy and there's only half of his body left because the damn bomb went on off? And you still got to hold the gun and take care of the country because that's what we're supposed to be doing, what we're supposed to be doing. Sleep with that at night. Roll over next to your old lady, your wife, and you're hitting her in the middle of your sleep. I lost my last girlfriend because I dragged her out of bed in my sleep. She told me the next morning, I'm going home. And she lives over on the other side of the state. We had a beautiful house. We had plans. I thought I met the right girl. But still, to this day, and it's over 30 years, and they can medicate my ass to where I drool on myself. But yet it's still there. It's still there. You can't get rid of it. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a real disease. It's like, the only difference between that and cancer is cancer eats your whole damn body and kills you. PTSD eats up your mind, and hopefully you don't kill somebody. I do not own a personal protection device. I got rid of everything. I hate to have something trigger me and maybe harm a human being by accident, not knowing because I'm in a rage. Tomorrow I have to go in front of a judge. Tomorrow I got to face a situation that, because I was told, I have no recall of this. I have zero recall. And that's part of what some of this is. So I don't know if it's true or not. It could be hypothetical. It might not be. For trespassing. Sounds stupid. I was talking with a friend and I followed them into their house after they said goodnight. I insulted them. I invaded their privacy. And they're a little upset over it. I would be too. Hell, I come walking into your house, wouldn't you be upset? I mean, unless I brought steak and pizza. But I mean, you know, and I have to deal with this tomorrow. It is part of what happens. But I have arranged for the proper legal counseling and as far as the law goes and that. There might be a penalty. I don't know how it's going to go. Am I going to lose sleep over tonight? No. I can't afford it. Because I got to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow. Because tomorrow morning, I got to sit in front of a district judge and explain to him what happened. And I don't remember a thing. I don't remember the occurrence. I know the person.
Mm-hmm.
Is it hypothetical? Maybe, but I doubt it. But I just have to deal with it because this is a real disease.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of what me and millions of other guys are going to be going through. When these guys, the guys that are come home or been home or whatever, and they're going through divorces, or they're getting thrown in jail for assault abuse or verbal abuse, and they don't even know what they're doing. All they did was serve their damn country. It's the way it goes. It's the price we pay. They called it they had a name for it in the Second World War. I can't think of it right now.
No, it was combat fatigue in the Second World War.
Combat fatigue. There you go. Thank you very much. You know, my name ain't Klinger, and I don't wear a dress, so it's not Section 8 that way.
Mm-hmm.
They discharged me for a reason.
Now, how long? But you were still in the Coast Guard though for a couple of years after that, because you had your whole. You went off on the icebreakers and were away from all of that. Now, the other thing that you mentioned before was there was also the actually very famous accident at the bridge there in Tampa Bay.
The Sunshine Skyway Bridge.
Right. Now, did that come before or after the Blackthorn?
That's what I was juggling a little earlier.
Well, somebody else could
Because
look that
it was
up.
January and February. I mean,
They were
was
right
like
together?
33 days that these two incidents went down.
Oh my God.
I think the Blackthorn was first, and then the Sunshine Skyway got hit, and the Southern Span, which was like 1,500 foot of steel, dropped.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people perished in that.
Mm-hmm.
I know the one guy that stopped his little red truck because he was on the paper and had his truck hanging on over the edge and got out of his truck, and then the truck fell.
Mm-hmm.
Said he'd never cross the bridge again. He'd always go the other way around to get on down towards Bradenton where he worked.
Mm-hmm. But did you have to go on rescue duty for that one too? Or recovery? Or
I was actually there were no. I mean, the group was able to have the recovery because there weren't that many people.
right.
I was in the operations center, and actually, I was handling the dispatchment, who was going to go where.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people out of Cortez, Sarasota didn't need to be involved as far as the Point Thatcher.
Right.
And the whole Saint Pete group was on out there. I mean, all the 31 or 30 and 41 footers were on out there. You know, we had an 82 footer on out there. But yeah, I mean, I think there were only 6 vehicles that hit the water, if I remember right. I'm not sure about that. But I mean, still, once again,
Mm-hmm.
it was an event.
Yep.
And when you hear it come across the radio, you hit the red button, and everybody's scrambling to get on the boats and get them untied and get down the way as fast as you can. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we were trained to do.
Mm-hmm.
Search and rescue is search and rescue. That's why, in my opinion, of course, the Coast Guard is elite. And I won't argue that with a Navy, Army, or Marine in an enlisted man's club. we just say, oh, I was in the Coast Guard. You go, oh, okay, that's cool, man, and you just let it go. You don't say nothing else. You don't go, you know.
Yeah. It may be the civilians know less about that or that whole side of it. Because Coast Guard doesn't shoot many people.
There's not a lot of public there's not a lot of hoopla.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the small boat stations they got here on the west coast of Michigan. When them guys scramble, they scramble. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the same thing. It's the same socks and same shoes. Everybody puts on their pants the same way, and that is quick.
Mm-hmm.
Get on a small boat because there's a boat going down off the whatever, South Haven,
Mm-hmm.
Howland, Grand Haven, Ludington, Travers,
Yeah.
New Buffalo, whatever. There's POB in the water. You're moving
Mm-hmm.
now. Because even in August, that old body of water out there ain't that damn warm. If it's 65, it's a good year. You're in water that cold for too long,
Mm-hmm.
your body freezes on up,
Right.
and you go down. That's just the way it is.
And Lake Michigan can get pretty unfriendly.
Well, what was it, week and a half or so ago, 2 weeks ago? You know, we had 17, 20 footers out there.
Yeah.
I went on down to Oval Beach and I'm going, oh my God, I ain't seen nothing like that since I was down in the Gulf or I was over on the Atlantic. This pond out here actually got enough
Yep.
stuff to stir it up to where it actually really happened. Because, you know, everybody's got their own opinion and everything about the Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
Some say it was two swells that were so big that the bow and the stern snapped in the middle because of the weight.
Yep.
Some say there was a swell amidship in the middle and she snapped that way. Some say it was because the damn hull was too rusty. Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows but the guys that were actually aboard her. You know? And that was a fierce storm.
Mm-hmm.
And Lake Superior is a lot deeper than Lake Michigan. The pond over here, she's shallow. She's shallow.
Michigan's pretty deep. It goes kind of straight down. Erie's shallow, Huron's shallow. But Superior, you can have that whole east-west thing going with the size of the waves.
And she's deeper.
Yeah.
And so, deeper water, you get a larger swell. That's the way it works because it pushes underneath and then it comes up. You know. I remember the Fitzgerald. I was still in I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to the radio in the morning, having my cereal, getting ready to go to school, go get on the bus and head to school, you know. And they mentioned that the Fitzgerald had gone down and she'd broken up. I think it was by
Your Whitefish Point.
Whitefish Point, that's
That
correct,
area.
thank you. But even then, you know, the Coast Guard had to be assembled and out there.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody made it. And she went down, she went down. That's it. And I've been up in the UP around the Keweenaw Peninsula. There's a beautiful state park right at the base
Mm-hmm.
that you can stay for a while, put a tent on up.
Mm-hmm.
In August, 80-degree days. You go walking on out into Lake Superior, it's still bloody cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's bloody cold. I mean, you want to wake up in the morning, go on out just below your knees and splash some water on your face. You're awake.
Right.
You go put the coffee out on the campsite.
Yeah. And the Coast Guard people just deal with that every day because it's a job. Yeah. All right. Now, I want to kind of close out your story here a little bit. You've kind of gotten at most of it now. You, after dealing with the whole Blackthorn thing and so forth, you essentially gave yourself a change of scene and got out of Florida and all of that and crewed down the icebreakers for a while. And when it came time for you to leave, to what extent was that your decision? To what extent was it your superiors, or how does that come about?
Because my superiors, and they were doing what they should, I was unable to perform my duties to an eloquency which is required because of the traumatic influx that had been, even though it was years before,
Mm-hmm.
it was still eating at my brain, as to say, like a cancer, but not actually deterioration, but it was causing problems
Mm-hmm.
to where mental thinking and even physical movements were limited because of PTSD. PTSD isn't just remembering that you dropped your Halloween candy on the way home and it fell into a mud puddle and you don't get to have none back. It's something, it's traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
For the veterans that are coming home that see stuff over in the sandbox. I say sandbox because that's where they're at. It's a code name. They're seeing stuff that you don't even get to see in the worst streets in the worst part of the United States, where people are shooting each other over money or drugs or wives or cars or whatever. I mean, you're seeing stuff that is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what them guys are going through.
Depends a lot on what they saw. In some cases, they had fairly quiet times. Some of them exactly the opposite. I mean, it's like coming out of Vietnam or something like that. Some of these guys go through just absolutely awful stuff. Other ones don't. And every individual seems to react differently. But the more
everybody handles it different.
But the more that goes on, then the more of the PTSD there's going to be.
I know a good buddy of mine that he's passed on, but I remember that years ago I'd be sitting next to him and we'd be talking and all that, and then all of a sudden he'd just stare. And everybody knew,
Mm-hmm.
leave him alone. Don't touch him, don't talk to him, don't mess with him. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And I mean, you let him alone, and he came back out of it on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like a Class A epileptic. You know, they just stare.
Mm-hmm.
But something would trigger him, and don't know where he went, don't know what he was thinking. But once he came on back, we're back laughing and joking and talking about this, that, the other thing, maybe shooting a rack of pool, you know, having a good time, thinking about going and get some lunch or whatever. But that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people, they go just blank. Some people, it's all different.
Mm-hmm.
It's all different with anybody.
Yep.
You know, I've been in complete rages to where the biggest man that I know knows enough to leave me alone. And is it because I broke the spark plug on off of his lawnmower and he called me and asked me to help him fix his lawnmower and I go into a complete rage? It can be a trigger. The frustration over where the hell's the damn electric bill? I pay everything on the first of the month. I've talked to people on the phone and they must think I'm insane. Where's my bill? This is the way I do things. On the first of the month, I pay my water, my gas, my electric, my rent, my TV, and any other miscellaneous things that come on in. If it's not there in order, the way I'm used to, I gotta walk away. I have to walk away from it. I have to physically get my lazy white butt out of the damn chair and go outside, have a cup of coffee, maybe have a tobacco, and just let it settle.
Mm-hmm.
I was with a very good friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and we were in a conversation, and this person knows of my situation.
Mm-hmm.
Something triggered me, and you can sort of feel it coming on sometimes. Sometimes it's instantaneous. Wham, it's there. And I said, you'll have to excuse me. I need to go home. That's all I said. And I came back here to my apartment and I sat on down, and I knew better to try to figure it on out, because you'll never get an answer. Just let it settle. Just let the big particles go to the bottom first, and then let the rest of it settle on in. Well, tomorrow, because I appeared that I made this person uncomfortable to where they were agitated, I have to go in front of a court and a judge. I gotta pay X amount of dollars for a lawyer. I gotta have X amount of dollars ready for any fines or fees.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm innocent. I didn't do nothing. I didn't touch nobody. There was no harassment. There was no incantations of anything that was
Mm-hmm.
not a proper conversation. But I have to understand this person as well may have situations that they need to deal with and have it. And they were in a problematic situation of their life when they were trying to be married, and something just didn't click or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the history or whatever. I'm not going to say that I know anything about anything. But I know that it caused a problem. And the best thing I could do was remove myself from that problem. 4 days later, I got a good friend of mine, who I will not give name, come to my door in uniform and goes, "You got to go to the county." I'm looking at him, what? And he goes, "Do you got X amount of dollars on you for bond, because that's what the bond is going to be?" And I said, "Let me check." "Yes." "No problem." Go in, bond out, no problem. But still, because I'm unable to drive a vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
I had to call a friend to meet me at the courthouse to take me home. And these are the things that they're problematic things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you got up all the safeguards and all the everythings and and all that, you know, and you think you're safe, you know, and you got your environment where it's just the way it's supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
to your liking, or liking between you and someone else, or however it happens to be, things occur.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to plan for it, but you can't. You can try to prevent it. You can't. I asked you a little bit earlier to take a look over at my dresser. I got 15 bottles on up there, most of them are doubled. Things that have come from the Veterans Administration. Just so that I have a mellow day. I don't like to have to be underneath the burden of having to take a substance into my body so that I can exist in a world which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect. Nowhere's perfect. But so that I don't insult nobody, nobody insults me, I can still go on down and have my normal lunch that I have every day and read my newspaper, relax, chit-chat with friends.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and for our purposes here with the Veterans History Project, it's kind of an important reminder that people carrying trauma with them can still have that happen to them, and we just have to be aware of that and understand that as we run into it or deal with people. If people understand better where you're coming from, then more stuff gets worked through, I guess.
And part of the therapy groups that I've seen, besides just doing a one-on-one with some guy over an office,
Mm-hmm.
desk, some of the best therapy I've ever had has been at the VFW.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you don't even need to talk. I mean, you don't talk about the situation.
Right.
You just glance on over and you smile, and somebody you've known, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't know them, they smile back and go, yeah, I've been there too. That's good enough. You don't need to sit down and go through the blood, guts, and
Mm-hmm.
gore, and da 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 da. Hey, shake my hand. I'll give you a hug, brother. What's up? How you doing? Buy you a beer, or buy you a Coke or something, whatever. And just sit around and talk about anything. Cutting the grass. Having to buy your grandchild a new pair of shoes. But if you isolate, you hurt yourself. If you get on out, you don't need to go through the drama. Just getting on out. I mean, it's with anybody that's gone through any kind of traumatic event. May have been a physical altercation through another human being entering your life. They have classes like that. They have groups. All you do is you just sit down and if you want to talk about it, you talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it.
Well, talking
It's
is
okay. I mean,
yeah, talking is now what you've done
and
for a good 2 hours, and
just hang out because by looking at somebody that they've been through something. I don't care if it's a tornado
or
or
whatever. Or,
an accident. I mean, how many times have you sat around and said, "You won't believe what happened today. I was going on down and I got hit."
all right, we are here. This tape here is about done, and I think you've kind of made your point, and a very good one here, about just having to deal with the stuff that you deal with. And I need to close out here, but I want to thank you for taking the time to lay out this story, because it is one hell of a story.
No problem. Thank you.
All right.